Mr. Minnick showing students on this gloomy Monday in January how to improve a project that uses constants. Taking a look at this project, when I click Run in Python here, we can click on one or the other of these two buttons. So it's not really a very fun game, but it's a start of something. So in this example program, it's laid out in the most professional way that we've learned here this school year. And there's a section called imports, and there's a section called constants, and there are other sections down below of this source code. In the constants area, I have some constants that are of general nature to the app, to the application. So this little section with speed, these are general constants. The next little section is all the buttons to be consistent. These constants have to do with the buttons. And I think this one here belongs up above. So I'm going to move this one with cut and paste. So those two constants, I named them button instead of button 1 or button 2. And every constant should have a nice little comment lined up neatly with other comments in that area that explains its purpose. Size of text on buttons, 24 font size. The next section of buttons, those are specific to button 1. Notice that when I named these, I named them with the digit 1 after the word button. And we've already learned in a previous course that constants should stand out and be very easy to spot from a distance. So they should always be named with uppercase letters for good style. Back when we used to send email, typing, or back when texting started about 15 years ago, if you said something in all capital letters, it meant you were shouting. Well, kind of like a constant is meant to be seen and shouted to anybody looking at that code so that other people can see it and recognize it. Notice how I use blank lines to separate these sections, general from button 1. Now, I do have 2 buttons in this project. So button 2 should have constants also over here. So I'm going to copy and paste all of these constants. Command C or Control C on your keyboard, clicking your cursor where you want them to go, and then Control or Command V as in victory, and changing all these 1s to 2s. That's the efficient way to code. There are more efficient ways that you learn in other courses, but in this course, that would be a good way of getting to your goal of having 9 buttons that work. Because I heard that some kid last week in this class made 9 buttons, but currently they don't work. Okay, he fixed it, allegedly. I'll check that later. I'm changing all these 1s to 2s. Now, there are people that know how to do Command F and do find replace, but this wasn't a whole lot of work. Now, just because I did that doesn't mean the program works any differently. In fact, now, potentially, I have 2 buttons that are both white with pink text that I didn't want. More about that later, because right now, that did not affect the way the code runs, but I did want to show you how you can copy and paste and change the number digit 1 to a 2. Okay, but on visual inspection of this, button 2 is going to end up being on top of button 1 because its bottom left corner, its XY position of its bottom left corner is also 0, 0. So let's move it over to the right. Some people would need graph paper. But if button 1 has a bottom left corner of 0, 0, and this is 100 width, because all buttons have a width of 100, and if I told you that there's a gap here of, it's either 40 or 50, I forget to be honest with you. Let's pretend that it's 40, the gap is 40. So that would mean that this X position on the X-axis would be from 0 to here is 100, a gap of 40, that would be 140. So we need the left edge for button 2 to be 140. I want the up and downness, the verticalness of it to be the same as this. So that 0 needs to match the 0 of button 1. And I don't like this. When these get out of alignment, I like to fix it up because that's just good style to keep your comments lined up if you can. A little blank white space, as they call it there, is nice for separation there. This signpost comment makes that stand out more rather than have it be way over here. That would be like not as standoutable, if that's a word. Anyway, variables, I'm not talking about them today in this video. Setting up the screen and other variable settings, I'm not talking. Oh, button 1. Look at all these button 1 settings. And button 2 has its own settings. But in button 1 settings, we actually use button 1 color here. But in button 2 settings, we're not using a constant. So it looks like the original coder that might work at my company or in my classroom hardwired that with yellow. I don't like that because other people wouldn't know to go to line 69 there and change that to perhaps blue if that's what color they wanted button 2 to now have. So instead of having yellow hardwired there, it would be better to realize that button 2, as of now, does have a color. And that's where you would put yellow. So please do that, people that are following me for classwork. Button 2 color constant should be yellow. Remember, we had copied and pasted all these. And because I have the word yellow typed there, this can be copied and pasted and put right here where it actually makes it the color. So this is what actually makes button 2 over here. The outline of this will now be yellow instead of white. Now when I run the project, it will actually be drawn with a yellow border. See, it's yellow now. So having a constant itself doesn't make something work. But using the constant in the spot where it needs to be used is what makes it work. Now this program is easier. If there was a parent, perhaps a parent named Kusmiers, who wants to help his or her daughter with her code, the parent would probably figure out what the constants do, especially with these nice little comments. But the parent might not know what pen variables are, how this is a pen variable, button 2, also called a turtle variable, and that turtles can have a color like this. That is complex, but constants up here are kind of easy to understand. Something equals something. Sometimes you do have to put double quotes around things that are strings. Sometimes you purposely do not, when it's a number, you don't want to put double quotes around it. And do not get a lowercase letter somewhere here, because then nothing will work. It's got to be spelled consistently. Okay, so what other things should we use as constants? Look at this button 1 section. It's all constants. No numbers except for this. That's annoying. So that should be a constant. For upgradability, that should be a constant. Can anybody in this room make YouTube fame? This YouTube, eventually, I'm just now recording this video, but eventually it'll probably have at least 100 views. It might get to 1,000. So somebody, what would be a good name here for the constant that instead of hardwiring that with a 5? Anyone? Well, raise your hand. Okay. Saul, what was your name going to be? Because I just made it. Okay, similar to that, good. But that's wrong. I purposely made it wrong. Because this is implying that button 1's line thickness could be different from another constant that had button 2. Who would want to run 2048, play 2048, when all the, well, it doesn't really have lines around the buttons, but when they're all different thicknesses? No, they should be, in my mind, they should be consistent. So that's more of a general constant. That should be one that's just button line thickness, not button 1, button 2, button 3. If somebody named Matthew made 9 buttons and then had button 1 line thickness equals 5, button 2 line thickness equals 5, button 3 line thickness equals 5, that would be so extra work. It's not worth it. But this one's just button line thickness as opposed to button color. Because in this particular program, I do want the buttons to be different colors, but I want the thicknesses to be the same. So I added that. If I were to run this, it wouldn't work right now because that isn't defined up above. So button 1 line thickness. Which section, where should I, Sam, H, where should I put button line thickness? This section, lines 9 and 10, this section, lines 13 and 14, or this section? You got it, because that's a general, applies to all buttons. Nice, see me for a grad ticket later. Man, I just jumped you with a quick question and you nailed it. What number did we have in there as the original hardwired line thickness? Trevion, what number did I have down below for my line thickness? What you're looking up in your code right now because you might not have it memorized from when you looked at my screen earlier. 5, very good. And we line this up because that's what Maddie would do. She'd line these up. Thickness of outline of button. So if somebody doesn't understand a constant by its nice long descriptive name, it's not allowed to have spaces in it, this is your chance to explain it in a different way. Now, I don't want you to write a book. These comments are supposed to be relatively short, but just a different way of explaining it sometimes than this. With these things called prepositions thrown in. Like of is a preposition. We don't say button width of or something. That would, you like names to be long but not too long when you're talking about variables and constants. Okay, so far so good. Now this section here doesn't have any mystery numbers. They're also called magic, except for this one. That's not good. That's the position of where the text is. That right there should be, because I'm the one who designed this, I happen to know, it's button 1 width left plus general button width divided by 2. That defines where the center of the button is. Its left edge plus half its width would take you to the X position of where the middle of the button is. So that spot right there is button width divided by 2 added to wherever this starts on the x-axis. I don't have time to explain that further in this video, but that's, sorry, those of you trying to follow along here, that's what I'm putting in on my line 52 instead of the 40, the first 40. This right here would be, because the square button's height is the same as its width, that would also be, button 1 bottom plus button underscore width /2. That 40 should be typed as that. By using these constants and little geometric mathematical principles like this, makes your code easier to upgrade in the future. Now, I'm not going to run this until later, but I'm pretty sure this is going to work better than the version that I started this video with. So button 1 now has no numbers in this variable area. It's all driven by these constants up here that are typed up before the variables. Button 2, I'll leave that as an exercise for students that want to get full credit on this assignment, if this were an assignment. So that 200, that 40, and that 150 and 0 eventually should be replaced with all capital letters constants. This just has to do with me finding out where I'm clicking the mouse. I'm not going to mess with that right now. And eventually, in a future video, I'm going to be changing these to constants. But for now, it should work with those numbers hardwired in there as well as in here. Okay, here goes, the moment of truth. Let's see if the changes we made in the last 10 minutes of this video work. I'm going to resize this window, run it one more time, and click, and see if it still works. Yes, and yes. Now, because of my change in the Y height, that's a little too far up. This one was hardwired. There is a way to find the exact center vertically of this. I don't want to get into that right now. It has something to do with your font size and then dividing that by 2, but that's kind of complicated for this video, so I'm just going to let that glitch be there. It's a little too high. But now we can change our constants and change the user interface of this project, like the line thickness. Let's make it real skinny, like 1. Let's change the color here to, say, black. Let's change the text to orange. It's Halloween, perhaps. So the day before Halloween, this might be button 1's look. See, now it's got more of a Halloween look. But if you celebrate Christmas, maybe during that season, you would change this to green and red, I guess. If you celebrate Hanukkah, orange and blue. Blue and white, yeah, that's what I meant. Blue and white. So that might be your theme. St. Patrick's Day is rolling around the corner. Green and yellow, I guess, or something like that. Green and white, maybe. Okay, July 4th in the United States. Some people are watching this video probably from other countries that don't celebrate July 4th the way we do. So, et cetera, et cetera. Themes can be changed much easier if you're using constants. Okay, I'm about ready to call it wraps on this video that was all about using constants in a project that has 2 or more buttons for easier upgradability. Yep, that's all I wanted to stress there. And